Well, to enhance revenue collection efficiency, ensure transparent reporting, and promote effective utilization of tax and other revenues, President Bola Tinubu approved the establishment of a presidential committee on fiscal policy and tax reforms. Now, a statement earlier by presidential spokesman Dele Alake says Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, a renowned expert on fiscal policy, taxation, and economic matters, will chair the committee. The committee comprises experts from both the private and public sectors. It aims to achieve a minimum of 18% tax to GDP ratio within the next 3 years without stifling investment or economic growth. While setting up the tax reform committee comes barely 24 hours after the president signed 4 executive orders to ease the tax burden on businesses in the country. For more on this, I'm now being joined by Yomi Olugbenro, who is a partner, West Africa tax leader in Deloitte. Good to see you and thanks for your time. Quickly, speaking of which, many Nigerians, this is one aspect, well, apologies look like I lost that connection. Well, we're gone. Well, the issue of taxation is something that many Nigerians would like to understand and get a sense of, and that is why they try as much as possible to get in experts so that they can expatiate more on this. Apologies, I lost you for a bit there. Good to see that you're back. Quickly, help us break this down when the country or the president has said, well, it's time for us to have a reform in this sector. Tax reform, in a layman's idea, if you can actually break it down to bits and pieces, what does that mean?
Well, thank you, Suleiman. I think the series of news we having from the new administration seems to be offering a great bit of relief, you know, and I think it's a breath of fresh air in terms of tackling the issue of revenue generation from a very holistic, you know, policy-driven manner, right? I think everybody do know that the country is in a dire need for revenues, and so there's a limit to how much we can continue to borrow. Figures are already, you know, tilting towards 50 trillion naira in terms of debt. That's if you exclude ways and means, and we're spending quite a lot from the revenue we have to service those debts. So it's quite understandable that we must turn to taxation. Now, but what's important is that raising taxes require that you are very methodical, because you do not want to kill the goose that is laying the golden egg. And if we judge by the action of the president so far, it seems like we're beginning to have, you know, a different approach that will ensure that taxes are collected in a responsible manner. 3, 4, 5 things that I think the president has done so far that touches on revenue generation seems to be very reassuring. The first one was that out of a few special advisors or assistants that he appointed, one of them was essay on revenue. So he understood that this is very critical, and so some of the immediate assistance he needed to make sure that that side is covered. All right. Yesterday we heard the news of the executive orders that were signed, suspending the implementation of some laws and that has introduced new taxes. All right, and deferring the commencement date for the new Finance Act and the fiscal policy measures, so that there can be a lot more room and time for taxpayers to prepare and get ready. And here we are again today, and I think for me this is perhaps the most cheering news, which is the setting up of the Presidential Committee on Tax Reform. We speak quite a lot about the fundamental issues that needed to be tackled, which you can do that just by, you know, issuing executive orders after, you know, one another, or just annual passage of Finance Act. There are very fundamental issues that requires that, you know, a committee sit back, look at all of the issues from an holistic manner. The goal is to raise revenue. The president said we want to raise tax to GDP revenue to 18% over the next 3 years. But we must do this responsibly. We must do this in such a way that that businesses are not so negatively impacted. And so all of the myriad of issues that will that needs to be tackled to ensure that while we're raising revenue, we're doing it responsibly, we're doing it in a very measured, in a very deliberate, in a very strategic manner. And so I'm very delighted at this news, and I'm happy that it's happening at the very beginning of the administration. So we get the policy right, we get on to implementation. If laws needs to change, whatever we need to change within the framework, we get it done and we get it started way early. And so it's the way to go. It's thumbs up from me as far as this action is concerned.
Well, Yomi, I think you've spoken about this eloquently. Let's now go back in time. It looks like deja vu when he was governor of Lagos State. Many Nigerians watching today would like to know what this has meant for Lagos in terms of actually fixing the gaps in taxation. So first, let's start by addressing bad administration and multiplicity, which may erode the good of this tax reform.
Yes, that's correct. So, the president came into office with a strong pedigree of what he did in Lagos State. And I think so far, he's proven that he will live out those promises. So if the full terms of reference of what the committee will be looking into or what the president will be doing with this very special committee isn't out in detail, but we had the highlight of it when the special advisor was making the announcement. So top on the agenda of issues to be tackled are issues around multiplicity of taxes and the multiplicity of revenue collection agencies. And I think you don't even need to be a tax expert to have had enough said about this. At the federal level, at the state level, at the local government, and when you include, the non-state actors, there are just too many lists, item of taxes that create significant compliance obligation for
I do hope we can get Yomi back again. Yomi is trying to explain some of the... Yomi, I see you're back. Again, apologies to our viewers. Can we carry on with this?
Right. So, the line of thought I was sharing was that there are quite a lot of big issues that has been tabled before the committee. First on the list is the need to harmonize the multiplicity of taxes that we have. And I was explaining that common layman will tell you that there are just too many of them. And if you do the analysis of the revenue that the government generates from taxes, perhaps 80% or more of the revenue we make is from 5 or 6 items of taxes. So the question you ask is, why do we need 60 or sometimes rolling into 100 number of taxes to be collected? So we need to consolidate, we need to harmonize. So this committee, as part of the work they will be looking into, it will be how do we harmonize these taxes? How do we harmonize the number of revenue collection agencies so that taxpayers know exactly one single point of reference that they need to have when it comes to their tax compliance, right? We need to look at how do we leverage technology, in doing all of this, in collecting taxes. We need to deal with the issue of tax morale. We need to have some fundamental shift in the way the system of government is run, to ensure that the tax-paying public, see the encouragement and the motivation that is needed to ensure, that they're complying, right? So how does the government ensure that there's judicious utilization, right, of the tax revenue? Right, so how do we ensure that there is enough incentive to ensure growth? How do we segregate between the top tier of the economy, where a significant amount of investment has been made, and the time is ripe for return on investment and for taxes to be paid, and separate that from a different group of the economy where it's a lot more encouragement, it's a lot more investment, so we can grow the micro businesses to medium. We can grow the medium to large size so we can collect a lot more. So for me, it's a comprehensive reform, and I trust that the committee members, we're going to have private sector there, we're going to have consultant that will be joining to do it's not just a work that's going to be handled by the committee chair alone, so it's going to be working with quite an extensive number of people. And so beyond what maybe given in the immediate as terms of reference, what I believe we will do across Qatar is to ensure that every fundamental issue that everyone has raised that's requiring attention is brought before this committee, and they articulate the issue very carefully and ensure that appropriate balancing is done. And then more importantly, the committee also have the mandate to ensure that they do beyond just recommending. They are also supposed to be part of the implementation work stream to make sure that the policies are implemented. So it's quite an interesting development, and I'm very hopeful that we will leverage this extensively to bring fundamental reform to the space.
Let's further dig into your expertise, Yomi, and ask your tax leader at Deloitte quickly here. What are the most fundamental key issues the tax-paying public encounters?
Okay, I didn't get the other part. You did ask what are the fundamental tax issues that the country needs to attend to. Is that your question?
No, that the tax-paying public encounter.
No, say that again. I didn't get you.
Now I'm asking, what are the key issues anyone who pays or who is a taxpayer goes through on a daily or on a regular basis?
No, okay, yeah, I get you. So quite a lot of them. So the first one is the point I was making earlier in terms of the multiple tax points and tax items that a taxpayer needs to comply with. The World Bank in the past used to release annual ranking on ease of doing business, and paying taxes is one of the critical elements. If you read that report, one of the major inputs into determining how easy is it to pay taxes is the number of hours that each taxpayer is spent to comply. And the number of hours is determined by the number of taxes you need to pay, the system involved, the process involved in paying. Is it virtual? Is it online? Is it digital? Do you have to travel physically to, different offices, different stations? And how many tax authorities are you dealing with? So within that framework alone, you have quite a lot of issues that taxpayers are going through. Taxpayers are dealing with too many items of taxes to comply with. Taxpayers are dealing with too many agencies, to deal with. Taxpayers are dealing with a platform, right? The FRS and perhaps Lagos State, maybe one or two other states have made some significant improvement in adopting technology, but there are 36 states, all right, in the Federation. If you look at a number of multinationals, they have branches and offices spread across the 36 states, including the FCT. Now, if you're dealing with 37 different tax authorities, and I'm referring to the mainstream tax authorities at the State Internal Revenue Services, the FIRS, and the FCT IRS in Abuja, if you're dealing with 38 different tax authorities, just because you want to comply with an item of tax, say, for example, the personal income tax, all right, many financial institutions, many FMCG, many large quoted businesses on the stock exchange have their branches perhaps in every state of the Federation. And for these businesses to discharge their obligations with respect to their employee taxes, they have to deal with 38 different tax authorities. That's a lot of compliance hours that's involved. Now, in addition to that, you have the customs authority. When you are importing, you have different agencies, coming into the fray to do an audit, to do a review. RAMFAC will come at you, different kind of agencies. So this is part of the issue. The platform, the process, the level of technology deployment, it's another. Right? The certainty, the clarity of rules and law it's another. You get to some local government and you are confronted with different lists of tax items that you never knew existed before. All right. So these are the kind of issues. You have issues of, every new year, every new finance act comes in, and there's a new item of tax to be grappled with. And if you just oppose that with the benefit that the taxpayer think they are deriving, particularly the large businesses, right? Power, road infrastructure, water, health care for their employees and for their key stakeholders. So sometimes it looks like these businesses think we're doing so much, paying to the government, and yet we're having to, for lack of better word, constitute a government unto ourselves, because we have to provide some of these amenities for ourselves, because they're not available centrally by the government. So on the one hand, we're doing so much to pay, and on the flip side, there isn't enough being derived by way of social service. So the breakdown of the social contract, it's what led to the low tax morale and the complaint and the pressure that the businesses are facing. And if you then open that up to the broader difficulties in operating in Nigeria, right? Because the difficulties in paying taxes is just one of the challenges that businesses are dealing with. You have to deal with different permits and approvals. You have to deal with, access to credit, access to funding. You have to deal with inconsistency in government policies. There's just so much that businesses, are dealing with. And that, for me, is part of the reason why the committee setup is exciting for me, because part of their responsibility is to say, we want to grow tax to GDP to 18%, but how do we ensure that we'll encourage investment? How do we do this in such a way that the ease of paying taxes is raised, is enhanced? And so there is no way this committee will do its work and everything will only be limited to this is the number of taxes or this is the rate. They have to be a lot more broader and look at the broader economy and ensure that there's an holistic attention paid to the whole system of investing and doing business in Nigeria.
Yomi, listening to you, bad administration is one thing that keeps, resonating in people's mind. But again, quickly here, the Lagos example could be a standalone. And that is why in other 36 states, including Abuja, what do you think, or how do you think the government can ensure that the culture of paying tax and with ease can trickle down these states and the Federal Capital Territory?
Well, it's quite a lot to be done. So some of it are the issues we're already thinking about, we're talking about since the start of the program. If you simplify the process, you make it easier, all right? If you reduce the number of compliance hours that taxpayer needs to do, you encourage them a lot more. If I can sit, right in my office and all of my, tax obligations across all of the 37 taxing authorities within the state and also FCT, if I could do it with a lot more ease, you are encouraging me. Now, if you ensure that there is an evidence that whatever is paid by way of taxes is being applied judiciously, you will encourage taxpayer, all right? If government focus on ensuring that the leakages and the wastages in government is curtailed, you encourage taxpayer, right? Because we're going to get to that era where everybody realizes that it's no longer oil money, right, that we're spending. You're spending taxpayers' money. And so people are going to be a lot more demanding. And the demand for accountability and prudence in government is going to rise, because everyone will literally see how you're spending their money, not our money, not oil money, but my tax money. So if government deal with issue of wastages, in government, it go a long way. All right. If people in authority show leadership by example, by ensuring that for their own private investment, for their own private businesses, there is an evidence that they are also leading by example. All right, and you're not only forcing it down the throat of the people who are not politically exposed. You'll have done a great deal of signaling to the taxpayer that you're applying exactly the same medicine that you are offering to them. So dealing with issue of tax morale, dealing with issue of transparency and accountability in government, dealing with issue of cutting waste all right, is going to go a long way. Dealing with the issue of judicious application and utilization of revenue is going to go a long way. Letting people see the direct benefits. Let them run on the highway and see the signpost that their tax money is making this road happen. So it's going to be a lot more encouraging. Let agencies of government, right, become more accountable, become more responsive, become more tolerant of the need and the expectations of the business community. So it's going to be a complete list of issues, culture change, and we will need to drive that extensively. The culture of accountability, of probity, of transparency, of responsible leadership they are all very connected with how a taxpayer sees himself or herself and the obligation that the government is placing on him.
Yomi Olugbenro, partner West Africa tax leader at Deloitte, many thanks for speaking with us.